Good evening.
Good
Chris.
evening.
How are you feeling?
Um, it was underwhelming, but hey, we got the points. We're staying up.
3 wins, 6 days, nothing conceded. This time last week, Everton, well, we'd had the 6-0 loss at Chelsea, obviously the home win against Burnley. But it was looking like a very challenging week. We've come out on the other end of this, having played 3 home games in just 6 days. And I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams could have expected us to get 9 points from this week, Chris.
Right, and I think partly that is because we've been so poor for the last few seasons. If it was a decade ago, you said, "Can you beat Liverpool?" Yeah, maybe. Could you beat a team that hasn't been in the Premier League for decades? Yeah, maybe. And another team that you haven't been in the Premier League for decades. Cool, three wins on the trot as expected, but not the recent Everton that we're used to. We can hardly win a game at home, and all of a sudden the tides have turned. We aren't an away team that can't win at home. 3 clean sheets, six or 7 days. We just didn't win 2-0 this time, so that's the only difference in the formula.
Yeah, absolutely. The game was a bit, especially the first half, it was a bit stale.
Yeah.
There's so little to pick out. I mean, most of my notes and observations really were from the second half. I suppose if we take it from the beginning, well, first of all, raw reaction is definitely great to win today. I don't think it was a must win, Chris, but the way we played was very commendable. And it was almost like it felt more of an assured performance, given the fact that we'd come on that moral boosting win on Wednesday night. And I must admit, the atmosphere was just something else. But this game wasn't a must win. It was probably one where we probably looked at it and go, if we get a point, that'll probably be enough. And we're about even with them on kind of the season, minus the point deductions of all of that. But we went into the game without Calvert-Lewin. And, you know, you're throwing a young lad in Chimiti up front. What did you make of the starting lineup and kind of the way that Everton were going to be setting about today's match?
So looking at the lineup, and especially if DCL, they said it was partly a knee. We knew he was ill and played his best game while ill on Wednesday. Chimiti coming in, it was a great setup for him to come in because the pressure wasn't really high. Goodison was in the best mood it's probably been for a little while now after 2 wins on the trot like that. So he came in good spirits. We knew Mikalenko was out injured, so we had to put Young there, but we didn't really have a backup plan if anything went wrong, and we had actually numbers in the midfield today. So it seemed like we were going to do okay, but yeah, we're talking the first half. It was just like this midfield battle slog, 2-3 passes together, which is more than Everton can do sometimes, but neither team really broke it down. Both were trying to be direct, but it didn't really work out. And I think the main highlight was there was a Pickford save from Ivan Toney, I think, in that. Was that second half? There was one.
That was second half.
Was that second half too? Yeah, it's just like shows you, nothing really happened in that first half.
Yeah, I think we were looking at each other at half time thinking, what are we actually going to talk about? If you just joined us, of course, Everton winning 1-0, home to Brentford. And it should have been a kind of smooth game if you looked at the two teams and Everton's kind of destiny for the season, but the win kind of means that we're secure. It's kind of put the icing on the cake for that, and guaranteed safety. It means that we're starting the final season at Goodison, which I think is absolutely fantastic, really. And hopefully no more of this drama. And of course, with 3 games to go, I feel a bit weird, Chris. I feel like it's like, what is this? You mean we're safe? I said to Andy, I'm getting a ticket for Arsenal away. I thought that would be like, we might need to get something a few weeks ago. And I think it's amazing that the game was a bit poor at times. It did come to life, but it's amazing that given the points deduction that we're safe with 3 games to go.
Yeah, wild. And that's the other thing when I was about to say, do I technically say we're safe? Because what can the Premier League throw at us next? Because all you need would be this, what do you call it again? The appeal from the independent commission going backwards. But let's be honest. We've actually, if they gave us an extra 2 points, we're actually still way ahead on goal difference if we lose every match and Luton wins theirs. Like, we're good. It's weird.
Is there any chance they could reverse it and actually give us more?
Well, if they deem it was incorrectly determined, there's no reason to say it couldn't flip, right? It's subject to a second review to say what was a correct. Unlikely, but
if we hadn't have appealed and accepted it, we'd be safe. That's basically all it means. You know, it's been really stressful following the Blues, really, since lockdown when we really went live with the online streams. It's just been one stress after another, and we've been coming on these streams moaning and groaning or feeling flat, and we've been almost accustomed to going to Goodison and feeling like, oh God, we go again, rather than feeling that excited feeling. I felt a sense of like today's match was like, okay, we've got another home game on the back of 2 wins, clean sheets, good form defensively. But I just think, how have we managed to turn that around? Because it was only a few minutes ago, I was watching in the same room that I saw us get humiliated by Chelsea at 4-0 at half-time. I didn't know what to do with myself. I nearly didn't watch the second half. I'm sure many Blues didn't. But I watched it. And then here we are, 9 points in 6 days. To put that into perspective, we had 14 matches, 4 months where we didn't win a game. And now we've won 3 in 6. It shows you how football is a funny game and how it all turns around. Anyway, should we get into the match and talk about, you know, it did feel like it was quite hard for the energy levels in the first half. There was something that was a bit flat about the match at the beginning, and it didn't really come to life. I don't think I've got really much to kind of talk about in the first half, other than the fact that it was a bit of a non-event.
Yeah, it seems, it was a non-event. It wasn't that both teams weren't trying. You could tell even Everton's ability to make passes and move around, it was better, but it was just nothing was working, and it was just a boring stalemate.
Yeah,
and
of course, there was quite a lot to talk about in the second half, and of course, famously, you kind of jinxed it with me. But let's talk more about the second half then, unless there's people watching that have things to talk about from the first half. You're probably watching a different game. Of course, one of the good things about the first half is that we were on the back of that Luton defeat as well. And that meant that there was even less pressure on today. Had Luton gone and win at Wolves, that might have put some pressure back on Everton. But obviously that result made it massive, and Sheffield United is down. But we've been looking over our shoulders a lot. And I think that kind of gave, at least the midfield, it felt like they had a new lease of confidence. But really, it started for me in terms of the action when I think Jensen played a brilliant through ball through to Ivan Toney. He's been lethal since he came back. And it took a really good save from Pickford in front of the park end before, really. And that sort of sprung the match into life. It was a good chance for Brentford. And I would think that they probably thought they could have done better, especially with Toney on the end of it.
But yeah, and like a few people are talking about Goodison again. I think he could well be a man of the match consideration. But the other thing now, we have Pickford bailing us out a few times with some excellent saves in that second half. So Pickford hardly put a step wrong as well. But I guess who, other than the saves from Pickford, who else really stood out to you?
Well, I think Pickford was absolutely outstanding in all 3 games, to be honest, and deserves all the accolades. I mean, he's done that to us in previous seasons, and he's had to be the one that's kind of stood out. But he really did look so commanding. He was excellent against Liverpool, but today it's just like one thing to another. I haven't got the stat. We've got quite a lot of stats to pull up in a minute, but I think the stats on goalkeeper and clean sheets, Pickford must be up there now, Chris. I mean, I'm sure we'll be able to find something.
I think he is. And was it Everton at either 3rd or 4th in terms of goals conceded of all Premier League sides, something like that, which is wild when you think we've had after Chelsea, we're like, we can't save anything. We can't keep a clean sheet. And all of a sudden it's 3 clean sheets at Goodison in a week.
6 days, you just can't write it really sometimes. But yeah, we want your views. We want your comments. Thankfully, the second half did improve. McNeil's powerful shot came off the street end crossbar, and that stood out. It was a typical McNeil effort, and God, it was close. He's got some left foot on him, and he's played really well across the 3 games. I'm sure it's not easy for any of them playing 3 games so close together and it being so intense, but he didn't show any signs of real fatigue for me. Chris, were there any other midfielders that kind of stood out?
Yeah. So I'm not going to say standout, but I've seen a noticeable improvement in Jack Harrison from the right wing as well. Not even that I would say he's back up to a Premier League par now instead of being subpar. He's not incredibly outstanding, but he's receiving the ball. He's making these runs on that, and we're getting in behind the lines on the right-hand side. And granted, it was kind of messy again, but it was a very similar goal, actually, to the one I did a little review of that Jared Branthwaite ended up scoring against Liverpool, where he goes to the back post, they find him, and the ball kind of squibs around in the middle. But this time, the real highlight to me today was Idrissa Gay. Again, knowing where to position yourself. We often create this space in the middle where you have players right on the edge of the 18-yard box, ready to receive and hands on hips, just waiting for the ball to come to you. He instinctively knew now's my time to come in. You don't see that with Gay that often, but he's clearly got the footballing brain that a lot of others don't. Him and Gomez, they have it, and he proved it right there and got us that goal.
Of course, Ghana was absolutely outstanding in the derby. I mean, look, he's really coming to his own again, and I think that Onana did okay when he came on, but let's talk about the goal. So basically, it wasn't long after that McNeil shot in the street end, you kind of sense that the same thing was going to happen in previous games for Everton, where the Gladys Street was becoming a pivotal thing for the Blues. And I think there's a stat somewhere where something like Everton have won 2/3 more games. There's a big stat where it's like, if we attack the Gladys Street second half, we win a lot more games statistically. Of course, that in
I guess it must be Ryan's park-in ticket that doesn't help them.
Yeah. I think probably that Bayern Munich with the 3 goals in the second half of the semi-final in 1985 was probably one of the things that kind of brought across the phrase of being sucked into the Gladys Street end. But it's true, really. And we've seen it in recent times and recent games. So many games live to mind with that. Duncan Ferguson, Man U, 2005, many games in the mid-90s. And in modern times, we've got obviously Dominic Calvert-Lewin's header on Wednesday. But you sense that attacking that way second half, the Blues would probably get a chance. And it came really from a possession period. Everton hadn't kept the ball that well in this game. And it was the first time we'd actually kind of tried to keep the ball. I don't know whether that was Brentford standing off or Everton just suddenly getting a bit of control. But the goal, do you want to talk us through what happened in your eyes?
Yeah, and I probably have to do a look over on the highlight reel to make sure I get the details right. But basically, the ball was out on the right-hand side. Harrison knocked it in. It was kind of messy, a poor clearance. Idrissa Gay noticed there was space right kind of by the penalty spot. And so we moved from the 18-yard box and anticipated that loose ball. And I guess open volleyed it on his right foot into the back of the net. And there was just an open hole defensively right in the critical spot, and Ghana knew where to be. Do you remember much more detail?
It was smashed home. Yeah, no, it's pretty good detail. I mean, look, he smashed the ball home, and it was a bit scrappy in a lead up, around the box. But ultimately, it was, if you look at it from a Brentford end, and I'm sure you'll do your post-mortem analysis, which I absolutely love when you analyse the games. Brentford's defenders were just not quick enough to react to the ball. And if that was Everton, I would be like, get out. What the hell are you doing? And I'll be blaming it. But from an offensive point of view, brilliant again. Gay getting himself in the box. And why not? I mean, he scored I think prior to the other goal, he'd scored 2 out of 100 shots. So why not? Maybe one thing leads to another, and then he can start chipping in with a few goals, because they haven't been coming from the strikers. So it's really refreshing to see that the likes of Gay can get on the score sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we hit the bar, was it twice? It was one of those, was it a good cross? Was it a bad cross or a good
That was
shot that
later
hit the
on.
bar
That
from
was
James
after
Garner near the end?
that
And
was
McNeil
after
had that great
Chimiti
strike to
actually
hit
had
the
a
post.
chance. Yeah, so there was a chance for Chimiti was put through from McNeil. That was around 83.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the Onana breakaway where he kind of gives it to Decore, but it was a bit of
On the offside.
I mean, it's basically a midfielder in a yeah, it was offside, but it was a midfielder in an attacking third that hasn't had a lot of fortune go his way.
Deer in the headlights.
And probably is a little bit like that. It's a great way to describe it. And then obviously we had the Garner free kick, which I'm not sure was intentional, but it looked good. And I'm sure behind the goal it was quite good fun. But I doubt it was deliberate. And that was it. I mean, but the thing is, that's a decent amount of chances. In fact, we only had one on target. It's actually amazing, this stat. But yeah, we had one on target, but we did have 18 shots. So we were a hockey team, but we just couldn't find that. I think the first half there was like very little on target for both sides. I don't think there was anything on target.
It is deceptive though. When you hit the bar or the post, it feels like it's technically the target, but the reality is it didn't go in. So it's not on target. And that's where like we had a lot of pot shots from outside the box. Brentford did too, though. They had a couple on inside, but did you also notice how angry, I think it was Brian and Burmo and was it Matthias Jensen got at each other at the end? They were just in a yelling match. But they were getting really frustrated not being able to break us down. So they had their own Mohamed Salah moment today, basically.
Yeah.
Of frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you didn't get that, there was a bit of an incident earlier on in the day when West Ham basically ended up if all but destroying or putting a nail in the coffin into Liverpool's title hopes, as if they hadn't already been dealt such a blow by the Blues on Wednesday night. But Salah and Klopp were kind of not really shaking at the right moments, and it was all a bit fabricated by the press. I think he's on his way out. Anyway, back to the Blues. As I said, 18 shots on goal, one on target. That probably doesn't quite tell the story. We did have chances in the second half to probably add a second or even third, but also Brentford did have a couple of chances themselves. They found themselves in the box a couple of times in the second half with better chances than they'd had in the first, and could have equalised, to be fair. Ivan Toney was the one that you kind of you needed to keep an eye on him, because I think looking at the lineups before the game, you kind of sensed that that he was the kind of main guy for them. But yeah, Everton again, decent amount of corners, but it was fairly even, and then possession-wise also very even. You've got a graph here with some of the players. Do you want to just talk me through everyone's performances and how you see them playing a role for the Blues next season? Who do you think out of this lineup is kind of the nailed on starter for next season?
Well, let's say nailed on, assuming we don't trade them or get rid of them for cash because we're desperate for cash. I think Idrissa Gana Gueye, is he out of contract, or does he have 1 year left?
I think he might have a year.
Okay, so I see Idrissa Gana Gueye starting every match. Branthwaite, Tarkovsky, and Pickford, like shoe-ins. Dwight McNeil, similar, unless we get a replacement, and everyone else is completely up for grabs. I have been impressed with Ben Godfrey in the last couple matches, honestly. On the defensive side, he's looked a little bit more comfortable, and he's actually willing to make crosses now. And even just the theme of the team, he's able to release the ball a bit better. Is it to the standard you would want from a Premier League fullback? Still probably not, but if you told him, Ben Godfrey, your job is to be the right back and we're going to develop you over a summer, you might be able to see a better delivery out of him instead of you're a center back, now you're a right back, now you're a left back, and he doesn't know how to be in those positions. I think there could be a utility fullback in his future, and we just train him that way, but we need a full offseason to get him there. But I don't think he should be starting. Mikolenko is probably safe, but you can get better. But DCL, Decore, that second midfield slot, because I don't think Onana's staying, and he hasn't consistently earned it. James Garner, similar. Jack Harrison goes back to Leeds. I think we have a pretty reasonable spine and left side, and everything else is up for grabs. In terms of today, though, I wanted to talk about the setup here. Did you notice that the second they took off Janelt, Wissa, Nørgaard, things really opened up for them? They went from, I was like, Keane Lewis Potter really had a lot more energy, and Damsgaard, who was excellent actually against Luton, was not starting, which was a bit of a head scratch. So the second they came on, the match opened up for them, and that's when their chances seemed to come in.
Yeah, it was interesting that they took Wissa off. But ultimately, that also allowed, I think, Everton to get a bit more possession. It was kind of a hand in hand, and that kind of opened up the game. Do you feel that Chimiti is likely to start any of these last 3 games based on this performance, or do you think it's kind of if DCL isn't fit and if Beto isn't returning?
So I would, and I guess it depends on what Dyche's preference is, but in a way, I'm really glad, as odd as it sounds, that DCL was injured, because it forced, and sometimes that happens with the way Dyche sets up his team. He's afraid to take risks on players. So all of a sudden, what you do, hey, we have to play this person. All of a sudden, Patterson's back in the squad, and he's not Ben Godfrey. He needed to come back in the squad because Coleman was out injured. Great, he's back in. Chimiti now, he got a full, 85-ish minutes until we put Michael Keane on to park the bus at the very end there. Just, again, he was a little bit out-muscled because Nathan Collins, Ethan Pinnock, Christopher Ayer are quite big. And that's when we're saying that the goal that we scored was because we have more mobility, or Idrissa Gueye does, compared to some pretty monolith-type defenders for them. So Chimiti was out-muscled, but he gave it his all match. And you can tell there's a player in there, and I want to see more of him, especially now that we're quote-unquote safe, barring any weird deduction at the end of the year. So, look, have Chimiti play and have DCL on the bench and rest him up and don't rush him back. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, he was always brought in as one for the future, but, my school of thought really is about, you can't get experience unless you have some experience. You've got to start somewhere. Ellis Sims was given a couple of games. He was moved on. But I think DCL, he played amazing on Wednesday. Apparently he's playing with a virus as well. I said to Jan that I was sitting next to Jan at the match, that I didn't think he was actually fully fit, but considering DCL wasn't fully fit, he looked more mobile. But I think he just played with that Derby adrenaline that probably all the fans had. Well, I certainly had watching it. This game didn't have that adrenaline level. If you were at the game, I'd love to know how it was atmosphere-wise. I had to come back down this way, so I wasn't able to go. But if you were at the game, you've just come out of Goodison, maybe you're in the car, maybe you're already home. What was the atmosphere like? Obviously, what you can't tell from the TV. I've just been at Goodison. I've been on the TV. It's so different because they block out some of the audio and all of that, Yeah. But yeah, what was it like? It did sound like there was some singing. But ultimately, a lot of that singing only came when Everton went 1-0 up. Really interesting to see a graphic that I've found now with the league table, because I'm looking at 12th. I'm thinking, Chris, can Everton get a couple of points back, win 2 of the last 3 games, and finish 13th? That's so crazy.
Yeah, and now that the you're not running with weights on. The burden it's off our back, so we can play with freedom now instead of being stressed. So as long as we aren't just on the beach, because honestly, I think the players look leggy today. But why wouldn't they be? We don't have a big squad. So as long as we can rest up before our next match, which is Friday night at Kenilworth Road against Luton, rest up and take a point at Luton away, basically borderline relegate them, play a match against Sheffield, and then who knows on the final match. We could get anywhere between 4 to 6 points in these final 3 matches, to me. Yeah, and then we end up maybe get 2 points back, as you're saying. Because what we also know, and we don't always think about, every position on the table gives you more millions of pounds back based on the Premier League rewarding you by your
it's big money.
Table position. So we need them back.
Yes,
financially we're
absolutely.
struggling. So.
And I think realistically, we probably can catch Palace here, but there's punching. It's only the fact that we got Sheffield United at home. You would like to think, if you look at the goal difference there from Sheffield United and Everton, you would like to think we'll beat them. And then the possibility of a point or two back, plus the other game at Luton, that I'm giving Everton a shot with this form in the week at getting 14th. I think anything above that will be ambitious. But the great thing really is we're sitting here and we're relaxed talking about Everton after a match when just over a week ago we'd been humiliated and we were really staring down the barrel of this Friday night fixture. Next week is a bigger game for Luton than it is Everton. Everton can lose the game. And I think that's a dangerous place for an away team to be, because I think that it means that the away team go with a lot more freedom. The home team will have to play up tight. And I could see a lot of goals next Friday. I'm sure we'll be doing a preview before the game, so we won't get into that. But ultimately, this is now between Luton and Forest, I feel. But Burnley have played themselves back into this. Commend them for actually giving themselves a fighting chance. But it's also been some wobbly form from Forest. And obviously, Luton have kind of gone downhill. They've certainly been entertaining, and it would be a sad thing if they leave the Premier League. But they have moaned a lot. And yeah, we'll leave it to that for the relegation contenders. It may be the last time we talk about relegation on this channel this season. But certainly, for the first time in 3 seasons, Everton securing Premier League safety. If you just joined us, 1-0 at home to Goodison is the 3rd win in 6 days. I actually can't remember a game. I mean, I'm sure there has been a week where we played 3 home games with a cup game and just the way the fixtures have fallen. But 3 in 6 days with all clean sheets. I'd love a statistician or somebody to kind of pull me out an instance where Everton have won 3 home games in 6 days and not conceded a goal. I think it's probably going to be a long history scroll through. Should we start going to the comments, Chris?
Yeah, let's do that.
There's been a lot of chit chat, and it'd be nice to sort of get the Blues view on this. I think a lot of people are celebrating Everton's win today, but moreover, the actual fact that we are safe. Peter, hi Peter, you're a regular here. So safety achieved. Dyche has done a good job. Do you think the pressure's off Dyche now, Chris, or do you think it'll be continue to be on there because he has a certain style, he has a certain demeanor and way that he likes to play? It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but he's got the job done, really.
Yeah, and this is what's so tricky for like Dyche. Am I really happy with what he did, or like how he's gone about it? For the most part, no. But you also think, okay, it is not his fault that we got 36 points. You could say it's his fault we got 44, but we knew we didn't have an excellent squad. He's occasionally gets stuff out of them. 44 points is not a terrible, even if it may not be a good enough for our Everton standards, but in a bad position where we just need to guarantee safety. And at the start of the season, I was probably happy with 14th or 13th, and we're basically there. So I agree with Peter. If we have the money and we have the right person we want to bring in, and we're not just replacing him for the sake of replacing him, let's do it. But at the same time, I think I was worried he lost the dressing room. I don't know if you thought that, but I think he's won them back, which gives me confidence that we're not procrastinating if we hold on to him to next season based on what we're seeing.
Yeah, I don't think you can get rid of him on the fact is that with those 8 points deducted, which were absolutely none of his business, to be honest with you, it's all financially related. Trying to explain it to a couple of non-football friends, how Everton have ended up with that. I tried to explain the kind of Russian thing, and it was like, but it's really hard to comprehend if you don't follow football that Everton have got a footballing punishment for a financial issue. That aside, Dyche, you have to say that 14 games without a win was completely unacceptable. I wasn't on the bandwagon of people who thought that he should be sacked at that point, but I certainly was getting towards the fact where a new manager bounce, a striking coach, or something had to change. It has changed, but I think that it's hard to pinpoint what it was. It was just almost like that fluky goal from Calvert-Lewin in the Burnley game that's really changed it a little bit. He said we're beginning to change the story.
Well, what I think actually changed the story, and Ryan was on the on right after with who was it, Chad and I. It was an underwhelming game against Burnley. In some ways, they looked better. We did just enough because they shot themselves in the foot because they couldn't clear their lines correctly. And then it was really the reaction after Chelsea that has changed my mind, or kind of right on the fence. And okay, he's worth maybe keeping because he asked himself some questions about his own leadership, asked his players, and there's some quotes that I have to go back and look at, but something to the effect of, you're not going to relegate, you're not going to get me sacked. I'm not going to let that happen, or something to that effect. And he had some really honest conversations with these guys because Jack Harrison has changed. I don't think Branthwaite's changed at all. Tarkovsky hasn't changed, but like the midfield in particular seems different since that meeting. Yes, the tracksuit, but that's only one very limited aesthetic, you know.
Well, since the tracksuit came in, there'll be a lot of sales of those tracksuits. So, although there is a rumor,
and this is the Chad phrase, so I'm giving Chad all the credit. Hashtag tracksuit Jesus.
Yeah, tracksuit is.
So yeah, that's his.
It's really been maybe it's kind of like, I'm wearing a tracksuit, and that means you need to get stuck in, lads. But that's just the Dyche way, you know. Had them playing full training, you know, shin pads and all. But yeah, lots of comments as you see. Some regulars, hi Mr. Blue Skies, Harry Coffee Bum, all saying that, you know, Dyche done pretty well. And you know, it's not his fault, this 8-point thing, and no budget. I would say it again for the umpteenth million year running, that we really need to strengthen in the attacking third, particularly with another striker, because Beto, he's absolutely worked his socks off when he has come on, but it's early doors for him. Calvert-Lewin's injury prone, and then you're down to the likes of Chimity who are not ready to go. So I think we need another one. If you look at some of the top sides, they have 4 or 5 good strikers, and it keeps competition up. We'll come to kind of the rephasing of Everton's team and any available money, which you probably don't have any, to be fair. But we keep going through the comments. If you just joined us, we have large numbers watching across all our channels. If you aren't following us already, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that like button now, because we need that as we build in towards Bramley-Moore Dock. Everton are going to be playing their final season at Goodison. The last game will be in the top flight, and Everton have such a long record of being in there, and we're so proud of that. It was an absolutely fantastic week for the Blues, and we want to keep hearing from you. Well, we've had so many comments, Chris, it's kind of overwhelming, but lots of people saying that Dyche has done pretty well. Also calling for Gay to say that he was brilliant, which kind of echoes the comments that you made earlier. I think he was really outstanding in the derby, to be honest. Mr. Blue Sky says he needs another contract, even at his age. He's a quality player. I mean, you're talking about a player here who played just behind Lionel Messi at PSG. So it just shouldn't come as a massive surprise. But Everton have this kind of notion of being able to almost make a good player into a bad one, if that can be said. But do you think to be really effective, we need a new kind of number 8 or a number 10 in front of that and move Decore to the side? I mean, would you...
So I think what's really tricky, and it's unfortunately just the way culturally, or like when you have Amadou Onana, Abdoulaye Doucouré, and Idrissa Gana Gueye in the same squad, there's a little period there with the challenges with Ramadan and everything else that I think it's perfectly correlated to now they're back to better fitness, and we're seeing a change in the middle. I think it seems very similar timing that they're back and at better fitness. And if we don't, so if there's a scenario where there's a lot of wear and tear on some of our players because of that, and it's, you understand the choices, right? So if we're kind of, if it's really difficult for fatigue, we need a different player in that position. Gomez is great, but he's not always available. James Garner has been okay, but we need, I think, one more midfielder than what we have right now, or probably 2 if we replace anyone in that squad, so we actually have backup options. Because if it's James Garner and Amadou Onana, James Garner right now is not doing excellent. He runs around a lot. but he isn't always making that much of an impact. I think Onana has been off and on this entire season. Ghana Gay has almost done nothing wrong. And then we have Gomez, who's when he's available is great, but you can't rely on it. That's 3 players, unless we get Lewis Warrington to play, but he's never taken off the bench.
Yeah, I don't think so. For me, the problem, Chris, is that they're all quite similar. They're not the same, but they are similar in their mold.
Yeah.
And this is a problem from a squad point
Buckley.
of view. Yeah, exactly. Onana, for me, did quite well in the last 15 minutes, but then he was fresh legs and he's hardly played much football in the last week. He did come on in the derby as well, from memory, although that game is starting to blur into one. But yeah, I think Onana, for me, hasn't demonstrated his best position for Everton, hasn't quite hit the heights that I was expecting him to hit. But I think we should keep him, because I think that if you just keep them long enough, they kind of develop, and it's not easy moving to the Premier League. The one that I'd be disappointed to see go will be Gomez, because I think he's got some guile and panache. He can play the ball, he's intelligent, but unfortunately, I just don't think he's got the pace to fit with the Premier League that well. I think he'll go. I just think that it's a shame. I know that Dyche kind of valued him, and there's other people thinking that he will leave as well. Some of our regulars think that Gomez is gonna go. But yeah, so many similar midfielders, and what I mean by that is, Chris, is kind of combative, sort of defensive midfielders, not ones that are going to run beyond your front 2 or front 1 and get in behind. So we could see a reshaping of the midfield if Harrison does leave, which it looks like he is going to leave.
So I think with Kevin's point here, somebody better in certain ways, and I'm not sure if you were on when I talked about the little things he did on the Burnley match that are unique to him, but we have a bad reputation of letting players go at the end of contract and getting no cash from them. So what I really think you'd almost want to do is have him get a year or 2 extension, but drop his wages by half, because he hasn't proven to be $100,000 player. Then you can flip him in the summer while you've still got him under contract and make some money off him. Unless he's getting
I mean, look, ultimately this is an off-field thing, but you definitely point out that players have occasionally left on the cheap, or we've not got the best deals for players. But I think there will be some rotation for sure with the midfield. I think Gay seems to be the one that everyone wants to make sure that he's still here, because he's fit as a fiddle. He kind of reminds me of one of those Ghanaian athletes at the Olympics, where it's just, can cover so much ground. It's not always the most glamorous in terms of his output, but he's just there on the edge of the box, picking up everything and sweeping up. And it reminds me of his first spell, but it's taken a while, I think, before he's got back to the levels of his first spell. I don't know whether you agree or disagree, but for me, he first joined, it was like not the same Gay that was there with Everton, but now he is.
So, yeah, and I think he came back in the Merseyside derby at Goodison last year, and we noticed immediately the comfort we had. He just dropped into position, but then he would be doing these crazy back passes without thinking in that position. And there was a goal against Brighton that my friend Adam and I, when I was in Perth, we basically just turned off the TV and said, we're out after this. What's the point anymore? So he was doing a lot of these really scary back passes, and that part of his game doesn't seem the same right now. So I think how he's distributing the ball is a big difference to me.
100%. Just going back to Gomez.
He scored 3 goals this year.
Yeah, he scored 3 goals. Brilliant.
Yeah. 3 goals, which is half of the leads. That's half of the top scorer for our team is 6. So he's halfway to our best scorer.
Yeah, I know. It's not good. I'd like to see what the stats are for the best teams without a goal scorer that has hit 6 or more. Somebody take away any team that hasn't had a scorer. There's some homework for us to see if we can find this. Where we would be if you kind of take away all of those. But anyway, Mr. Blue Skies, going back to Gomez point. Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see where we are. We're probably in the top 4. Points per team for a team that doesn't have a scorer. Mr. Blue Skies says if Gomez would drop his wage, because he's on a very high salary. This is going back to what we were saying about finances and cashing in. He is on actually a very high salary, and that could be a deciding factor
on 100K
right now. Him on as well. Yeah, without naming pay slips. So yeah, exactly. Obviously Everton are now safe, but they have a massive say in both the title race and the relegation battles. Thank you, Gary, for sending a coffee our way. And we do appreciate you liking and subscribing and telling your friends and mates. We've got one more season at Goodison, and then we go to Bramley Moor Dock, and that season will be played proudly at the Old Lady. And I think season ticket renewals have passed, but it's always ironic. I always find Everton play pretty well when the season ticket renewals are out. They kind of want to just remind us.
Just when they're out of contract. They need to...
Yeah, it may or may not be a coincidence, but certainly Everton's form was outstanding this week. Pickford, you just can't fault him. It'll be interesting to see what match of the day and the other media make of the Blues. Just a little joke that I found earlier. I was scrolling through trying to record the Formula E Monaco race, and I come across Liverpool FC TV. How dare they even put that on Sky? But they had a really nice match that they're playing tomorrow afternoon on Liverpool FC TV called Everton v Liverpool from Wednesday night. So I wonder how many people will be watching that game on the Liverpool channel. It's certainly been a fun week, Chris. There's been so many comments since this match. Obviously, everyone is kind of delighted. It's kind of, we usually get most of the people come on when we lose 2 or 3 or 4-0, 4-1, at home. Was
or 6-0 when I had the watch along. That was horrible.
Did you stay the whole game to do that watch along?
Yeah, Ryan helped because I ran out of words. I was just defeated. And
Ryan, yes, I remember. He was like this.
In the misery with me.
He was like this. Like, do I have to be here? But yeah, Ryan, not the best week for him. He's actually had work and missed 2 home games. Mm-hmm. One of them was the derby, the other was today. But that's how it goes. So maybe, Ryan, you should stay away from Goodison because we seem to be winning. Some funny comments coming in, and we can all laugh. And I think
he's at Sheffield, by the way.
He's at Sheffield, where United.
Yeah, he's at Sheffield United. You know why you didn't recognize him? He shaved his head and did like the little short mohawk for a charity, so his long head went away because he wanted game time, so he got it. But he
didn't play today, though, did they? They lost 5-1. Newcastle. He didn't play, did he?
I don't think so, but Mason Holgate did, and Mr. Sitter.
Steve says, love to start Arsenal winning the league at their ground. I mean, isn't everyone a bit fed up of City? For me, I want Arsenal to win the league. The reason is I think City could be robbed of something. And if Arsenal don't win, then, it probably default to Liverpool. You just never know. But yeah, in response to that, Kevin is looking at the Arsenal game saying a goalless draw would be to get a good result. I mean, this is 2 or 3 games away. We've still got 2 games to play. But yeah, it's still, I think Everton can have a massive say in the relegation battle with the Luton match, and also with the Arsenal game, which is definitely a driving factor to wanting to go to the game for me. It'll be one of those games where if City don't win and Arsenal win, then Arsenal might win the league there. But it's not been a happy hunting ground for Everton on the last day of the season. There's been the Tony Adams finish and several goals. I was at a match, Chris, it was a long time ago, 15 years or something ago. Everton lost 7-0 at Highbury. So it's always
hardly better than 6-0.
I did actually stay to the end, and I should get a medal. If you've just got back from Goodison and you've beaten the Queen's Drive traffic or wherever you're going back from, welcome to our show. We've been live for 45 minutes, so you might want to check back. We go through the match and tactics and some players to watch and the league position and the fact that we had 18 shots on goal and only 1 on target, but we scored it. There was I had the Sky Sports commentary, and Carragher was saying that Michael Keane was going to not go to the back. He was not going to play up front. But commentator was like, no, he's going to play up front. And of course, the commentator was right. It was quite amusing, right? You got number 5 playing up front. Yeah. Oh, only for a few minutes, but still,
yeah,
it's amusing.
Well, it was kind of like you had to, when they say you do a straight swap and then you move to your position, it's almost like you did that. Like Chimedi was standing there. Now I'm going to go back, and the match was over by the time that free kick or throw in ended.
I think the tactic was just if they get a corner, we got Michael Keane to give them an own goal. But no, seriously, in all seriousness, it was just good to see that at the end. It's a sort of thing that you want, and you would do it if you're on FIFA and in that position. But to see it in a real game where you put a centre back, yes, Michael Keane has been a striker in a former life. The jury has been very much out with him. He's played some good games and some not so great, but for today, it's all about Everton. It's about the fans. It's about staying up. That's why we can't wipe the smile off our faces, because despite the points deduction, the Blues have kind of beaten all of the odds, really, and they've kind of defeated the Premier League's judgment and stayed up. So up the Toffees. I think, Chris, that brings us towards injury time here in the first half of our debrief. But have you got any final closing thoughts on the Blues as we head into this kind of weird period where we're like, we're safe, and we play on Friday night?
Well, okay, why don't we say this? This is how being an Everton fan should more or less feel like. Winning matches, being proud of your team, getting results, going to Goodison and thinking it and demanding a performance. We know we're not excellent, but we have heart. We always ask for that from our teams, and Dyche has found a way to bring that back. And I think as fans and as me watching, and for you, Steve, that's what we're asking for. And it feels like we're getting what we deserve, I suppose, is a way of saying it.
Yeah, it's about bloody time that we could just take a breath, just not be stressed. The last time I wasn't stressed was the international break. And it's just now a nice time to go, right, we've got 3 games, we can start rebuilding, we've got final season at Goodison. It's still very hard to get tickets to Everton matches. They're high demand. We've got a chance now to kind of reset. We haven't got this lingering multiple points deduction scenarios thing. Yes, there's an appeal and all of that, but you would think that it would only go one way. And the other side, very, very unlikely to be doing the business. If they are, then it's going to take a drastic drop of form from City and Arsenal. And at the same time, that means that Everton fans can enjoy the summer, basically. Deserve it. Go to watch the Euros, enjoy the summer, watch the Paris Olympics, and then we come back and we go again in a final season. And before we wrap up, I'm just wondering, is it just more of the same now, Chris? Are we going to be hoping for anything more than this season in terms of, somewhere between 12th and 16th again next season? Or do you think that there's something that could really change our fortune and we start pushing towards the top half of the league? Dare I say it?
So Everton is not Rome, but it won't be rebuilt in a week or a season, in my view. You need a lot of finances, and you would need to gut the entire system, which we can't afford to do. So I think it's baby steps. It's ensuring that we have this whole, we're in borderline in administration, who's going to pay us out. We've got that to figure out first. And once we know where our finances are at, we can demand more. But we proved basically with this squad, plus or minus a couple players, get rid of Onana and exchange that for, I don't know, a Kyle Walker-Peters or a Joel Weltman and maybe Ross Barkley on the cheap. Just have a bit more squad depth, and we go again and we don't have a great squad. The depth isn't there, but we proved we can do it, and there's not too many players over the hump on age to not say they couldn't do it again. Maybe Ghana gave it, he's in shape. So.
What Rod thinks that we're in for a couple of torrid seasons. I think that you're spot on with the comments there, and there's an element of rebuilding, but this kind of takeover will probably be the next focus. And I think it'll be interesting to see how we line up next season and what happens with the takeover. But for now, let's just revel in the fact that Everton have secured Premier League safety, and they've done it with games to spare. We really appreciate you joining us for the post-match, and I'm sure there'll be more from the Follow Everton team as we unpick this performance tactically and from a rating point of view. But from myself, from Chris, from everyone at Follow Everton, we'd like to wish all you Blues a really good evening, and up the Toffees!
Up the Toffees!